Welcome to Psyber Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. Today, Bob and I are talking about Justice League, both the theatrical release and Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was the re-release, because the original version... Zack Snyder originally was doing Justice League and then had to leave because of the death of his daughter, Autumn Snyder. And he left, and Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon to finish the film. That was 2017. And he chopped it up, made a few additional scenes, changed the feel of it, and part of that was Joss Whedon himself, and part of it was Warner Brothers, I'm told, and kind of lightened it a bit, and also wrote in a bunch of jokes that didn't work. So I watched both this past week. I watched the theatrical release first, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League second, and that's I'll refer to that as the extended edition, I guess. It is 4 hours long as opposed to the normal length theatrical.
Yeah, I just watched the Snyder Cut. I just did not want to watch the theatrical version again. So I remember enough of it to remember that I didn't want to watch it again. And just watch the Snyder Cut. But I do remember a lot of the differences. And you're right. It's Joss Whedon, came in, and part of it, like you said, was Joss Whedon, and part of it was Warner Brothers. I think they were trying to put kind of a Marvel spin on it, color it up.
Well, definitely.
Brighten it up a little bit rather than the darker tone that the previous Snyder movies have been. All I could say is thank goodness we got the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, it's a little too late, but it would have been great if that had been the feature that had originally come out, though they might have lost part of the audience for a 4-hour movie.
Well, they probably would have broken. I was thinking about that too, and I think they would have broken it up into, a two-parter,
like a part one and part two.
Yeah. Right. Well, like what they've done with like the Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1, Part 2, the Twilight, was a
Harry
Breaking
Potter.
Dawn. Yeah. Well, Harry Potter. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, they've taken the last couple of books, even the Divergent series, Allegiant, the third movie was going to be part 1 and part 2.
It was going to be two parts. Yeah.
But they didn't. They didn't do that.
The thing is that Harry Potter did it first, and so people were okay with it. But then they started doing it with every movie, and people started to catch on that it wasn't really necessary. It was just a cash grab. I would even say that would apply to the Harry Potter, the seventh and eighth Harry Potter movies, which were based on the seventh book. And while I like them both, they could have cut some stuff out and made it one longer movie rather than making it two parts. And part 7 was kind of a lot of lead and not much, payoff.
Well,
we're not here to talk about Harry Potter or anything, but I think that what happened, and I'll let you finish in a second. I think what happened is that people got inundated with it because Harry Potter did it, and then the Hunger Games did it with their third book, and then The Hobbit. They were making The Hobbit because of the popularity of The Lord of the Rings, and they split it into 3 movies, even though The Hobbit itself, the book, is much shorter than The Lord of the Rings. They could have made 1 movie, but they made it 3 by using stuff from a separate book, The Silmarillion.
I think let me interject here that I believe that the reason they do part 1 and 2, I look at it more altruistically in that how many times have we watched a movie and been like, oh man, if they had just done this as a TV show across 8 to 10 plus episodes, it would have been a lot better. I think that for some of these series that they do these part 1 and part 2s to really end it off well and really expand upon it so that final book or that final movie, let's say, if it's not based on a book, really gets all the development and stuff that it deserves. And I think with the Snyder Cut of Justice League, it would have done fine. I know it's a 4-hour movie broken down into 6 parts plus an epilogue, I believe. But I think that it would have been a part one and two, and it would have been fine. There's plenty of places, around the middle of that where they could have easily left it open and teased you for the next part two. Cash
Yeah.
grab aside, I mean, sure, that's going to be more money, but the bottom line is these part one and part two movies, they do put the extra time in. It's not like they took a 2.5 hour movie and broke it up. I mean, they really try and put in there the things that people want to see. And
I
I do think it's because, like I said, people want to see the. I mean, look what they're doing with Harry Potter now. They're making it into a show on HBO, and then
Yeah.
everybody's like, "Oh, they're going to put in all the parts that they couldn't put in the movie." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "Well, this seems significant," and I was like, "We're really happy with." I think everybody's pretty happy with the Harry Potter movies, how they came out
Well,
and everything else. And they were, it hasn't even been 10 years, I think, since the last one. And we're already getting a new series and it looks
I
exactly the same. Anyway, we're,
well,
we're,
I
we're
agree
getting
to a
off of Justice League, but
I agree to a certain degree. But the thing is, some movies should be split up because there's so much story to tell, and other movies, it's not necessary. In the case of The Hunger Games, the third book, I think they could have easily made one movie. And that's not to say I didn't like parts one and part two, but it was not necessary. And I think that people were getting tired of it. By the time Divergent did it, people were like, all right, that's it. Unless they had made an absolutely killer third part, the fourth part wasn't going to see the light of day. And it never did. That's why I thought the first one was a good movie. I thought the second one was really good, and I was excited to see the third one. And then the third one didn't do very well, and they said they were canceling part four, so I never even bothered to see the third one because I don't want to see a movie that ends on a cliffhanger. And I think that's the situation. Anyway, yeah, we are way off topic now. As far as the Harry Potter stuff, I'm of both minds because the movies were done really well, but they did leave a lot out. A
yeah,
lot.
they
As
did.
someone who has read the books multiple times, I would be, if I was going to watch the TV series, I would be excited about it because I would want to see all sorts of things that were left out of the movies. I'm not going to be watching the TV series, but anyway, Justice League. So there were a couple of scenes that Joss Whedon did film to add into Zack Snyder's work. And I'm sure that part of it was because Warner Brothers wanted a lighter tone. Zack Snyder's movie is dark, darker than I would have imagined a Justice League movie to be. And that's not to say I didn't like it. I actually thought that Zack Snyder's version was great. Like, I thought it was excellent. I think along the same lines as everyone else when it comes to the theatrical release. It's a disappointment. It's a mediocre movie. It's not a terrible movie. It's not unwatchable. It's just it doesn't hit it, you know?
Right. Well, yeah, the theatrical version, it was, I mean, what we were getting at the time was it was just, I felt like I was just happy to get whatever we could get. And it was like, oh, we got a Justice League movie and, you
Oh yeah, yeah.
wanted to like it, but it really wasn't anything that you could like. I mean, it was,
I was really excited going into it. From the trailers and everything, I couldn't wait because I'd been waiting so long for a Justice League movie.
right.
But what we got was a movie that falls apart, and it's not that like I said, it's not a bad movie. It's just not a good movie. It kind of finds a way to just exist,
I'm
and
gonna
part
I'm
of it,
gonna I'm gonna say that the Whedon version, the theatrical version of the Justice League, is a bad movie. And I think that I can say that with confidence because now we do have the Snyder Cut, which was his vision all
yeah,
along. He was given an extra budget, reshot scenes for the Snyder Cut, completed it, probably still not to his total satisfaction, but he was able to do the things that he wanted to do and the things that he wanted people to see and put it in there. And I mean, Joss Whedon, whatever people think of him, I've heard people who just hate him, people who love him. I know he tried. He had success with Marvel, with some of the Marvel movies that he did.
yeah.
He was kind of the founder of, the way the whole Phase One.
No, he
Yeah,
wasn't. That was Kevin Feige.
well, Kevin Feige. I'm
Joss
just
Whedon
saying.
didn't even all he did was the Avengers.
Yeah, the
He didn't do
Avengers.
any of
But
the
what I'm
movies.
saying is that said that we had movies before them, but that definitely set a tone. I mean, the Avengers movie was a well put together because
Yeah, it was.
the Avengers were the thing I was worried about, and honestly, I didn't worry about it with Justice League. Ironically, was I was like, we have so many characters. How are we going to give them optimal screen time, and then bring the team together? And I think what we found was, in Avengers, they did a great job.
Yeah.
It was great. And then what we have with the Whedon cut, we'll call it, of the theatrical version of Justice League is we have very much, the other than the humor and stuff like that, we have a very toned down Flash. We got Cyborg, a lot more
Almost
storyline to
doesn't
him.
appear in it
Yeah,
because
almost isn't even in it.
it was a
Yeah, it
bare
was
bones
just
movie.
it
Even
was.
Steppenwolf had no purpose other than he was like a completely one-dimensional, I'm going to destroy the Earth. That was like his whole reason for doing it. We actually got a pretty good reason in Zack Snyder's version.
Well, sure,
Joss Whedon,
We got Darkseid.
yeah, we got Darkseid. I know that one of the mandates that WB gave Joss Whedon was that they wanted him to not put very many. I don't know if they said none at all or just very few references to other movies because they thought by that time people were starting to get tired of how Marvel was always teasing the next movie. So Warner Brothers
Right.
said, let's not tease another movie. So Joss Whedon took out all references to Darkseid except one. Like there's exactly one instance where they mention the name Darkseid
Hmm.
in Joss Whedon's version, but he never appears in it, not even a hint of him at all, even though he was like a big part of the original, Zack Snyder's version.
Right. Yeah.
And really, you can't have if you're gonna if you're gonna make a Justice League the animated films where there's 100 of them, you can make movies that have nothing to do with Darkseid. But if you're gonna do a live action Justice League movie that people have been waiting for 50 years to see, you got to use Darkseid.
Right.
There's no other villain that comes close, and Steppenwolf certainly wasn't.
No,
Who the
Steppenwolf
hell is
standalone.
Steppenwolf?
Right.
Come
And
on.
the look that they gave Steppenwolf in the Whedon version versus the Snyder cut was different.
Yeah, he was more like it was
Completely
all
different
flesh.
character, not just
Yeah.
looking, not just his appearance, but the lines that he said and stuff like that in the Whedon version. It was more of a, I don't know how to say it, a
Well, because all he
cartoonish.
was, yeah, because all he was trying to do in the Joss Whedon version is put the mother boxes together so that they form a unity, which will destroy the Earth. And that was it. Like, there was no reason given other than he's going to destroy the Earth.
Right.
And, that's part of the problem. And I don't like saying bad things about Joss Whedon as far as his writing, because the guy gave us Firefly. Firefly is still probably my favorite television show of all time, and it managed to do that in 14 episodes. Yeah, now I do know that Zack Snyder was planning on finishing it, and what happened was his daughter Autumn Snyder committed suicide. I don't know if they ever really talked that much about the reasoning behind it. I know she suffered from depression. I would not I can't imagine what it was for him going through it. So I can understand why he stepped back from the movie. But it does suck that the timing
Right.
was so bad because I don't know for sure, obviously, because I don't live in a timeline where that was that was the version that came out. But I'd like to say that if Zack Snyder's version of Justice League had been what we got when it first was released, there might still be a DC extended universe going on
I
right now.
I agree. I agree. I think that there was a lot set up, and that there was definitely potential for future movies. Which we got movies afterwards, but
Yeah, we got Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, like I said, I think that if Zack Snyder's version had come out, it might have kept DCEU going a little bit longer. But with movies like Wonder Woman 1984, maybe not, because that movie was really bad. I can't even think about how bad that movie is.
I
It's
was so
really
looking forward to
amazing.
that one, and
Yeah,
yeah.
me too. But it's one of the very few movies that I considered walking out of. I never leave movies before they're over. You know, if I'm going to spend the money to go see a movie, I want to see the whole thing, even
See,
if it's not very good.
I could
But
swear that Wonder Woman 84 came out streaming on Max day one. Maybe it did come out in the theaters too. I remember that
yeah, it did.
The Snyder Cut came out during COVID. And funny story here. We had flown, me and a couple of my kids, we flew to one of my sons and my daughter. We flew to Texas on vacation, and we were visiting a friend. And my friend had a 100-inch movie screen in his backyard. He had just built a brick oven, pizza oven in his backyard. So we watched the movie while we were making pizzas in his pizza oven and just sitting in the backyard. It was awesome.
I guess we should just get into it. One thing that I did notice so I watched, I know you didn't, but I watched both versions. So I started with the theatrical cut. And the first thing that we see is an interview with some kids. They say they're doing a podcast and they're video recording Superman. I don't know what he was going for, but it just came off really, really awkward. And I don't
Uh,
know if that was supposed to be funny.
yeah,
I,
I think what they were going for was just, them missing Superman. It was kind of like the world was missing Superman. I think I got to talk here too about the mustache, the computer
eh,
generated, because that's the first scene where his lip is like, I mean, it's like first generation AI, like
yeah,
his lip. Yeah, it was. But
yeah.
I think that the podcast was to demonstrate, hey, we miss Superman.
I
Um,
guess
yeah, reminiscing
it's
about
just
his what he was doing.
it kind of goes against the Superman that we're coming up with, though, because, I said before, Henry Cavill is not the Superman that I grew up with. And I did find that Zack Snyder did announce some plans at one point. He was going to, and this actually lends credence to my theory that it was the Injustice universe. He said he was not going to do Injustice per se. It wasn't going to be a one-to-one
Right,
version of Injustice, but
right.
he had a 5 movie story arc that was going to involve Lois Lane dying, Superman getting corrupted by Darkseid and turning into a villain. And he said it wasn't Injustice because in Injustice, Superman is just himself and he becomes this dictator. This was going to be a result of Darkseid corrupting him. So it wouldn't really be Superman's fault. But that's still another way of saying Superman's the villain. So reading that just made me that much more sure that what I've been saying is true. Henry Cavill is not the Superman that I grew up with. He's not a Superman I want. That's not to say that Henry Cavill can't act. He's a great actor and he acted the hell out of Superman. It's that Superman is not the Superman I want to see. And that's why I love the 2025 movie so much because
Yeah,
that is Superman as I know him. I also don't think Amy Adams is a very good Lois Lane. And and I've said this before, Amy Adams is a great actress. She just cannot do Intrepid Reporter. That's beyond her.
yeah, and it's funny too. I thought in the Snyder cut that I didn't realize how little she was in the Snyder
Yeah,
cut.
that was
She was there, comforting Martha.
yeah, they
Um,
added a new scene with Martha
I thought it
because it
was good
wasn't
because it expanded,
but it
some of
was
that
weird
stuff.
though. It was weird though because it takes away a lot of what was so good about Zack Snyder's version. In Zack Snyder's version, Lois spends most of the movie grieving. We don't see her much, but when we do see her, she's completely at a standstill. She's not going into the Daily Planet. She's sitting at home or she's buying coffee and going to the memorial and bringing coffee to the cop who's played by Mark McClure. And I'm happy to see Mark McClure because he was Jimmy Olsen in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Right.
But she's just doing nothing. And we do get a scene with her and Martha in Zack Snyder's version, and it's at Lois's apartment. It turns out that that's not Martha, it's Martian Manhunter disguised as Martha. I mean, I think that we could have benefited with actually having Martha and Lois, But we did get Martha and Lois in the theatrical version, but she's at the Daily Planet. So it's almost like she's not even grieving. The only thing they say about Lois in the theatrical version is that she's not doing big, intriguing stories. She's doing fluff pieces, as she puts
Right.
it.
Yep.
I'm perfectly happy doing fluff pieces right now because that's all I'm capable of because Superman is dead. And it took away everything that I liked about her, or what little was left, because I didn't like Amy Adams. There was another scene that was added at the very beginning of the movie, which was Batman capturing a parademon. He caught a criminal and then hung him over the side of a building because the criminal's fear would draw the parademons.
Right.
Then he fights the parademon, it gets away, and then he leaves, leaving the prisoner standing on the roof of the building. He doesn't even take him in. So this is a Batman that allows criminals to walk free, apparently.
Well, yeah, that's reading into it a little too much. I think it was more like Batman had bigger things to worry about because he knew about the parademons and everything else, and so he
Yeah,
left the
but
guy there. Plus,
still,
the guy was a low-level petty crime guy.
it's
Um,
Batman.
yeah,
He
but
does,
still,
yeah.
yeah.
But one thing I
But
did
he's
like,
older Batman. His priorities are different.
yeah, that's true. But it still was something that I noticed. I was like, okay, so we're not taking the bad guy to prison. He's a
Well,
thief.
but there's context. I guess what I'm saying is there's context at least for some of that stuff for them to behave differently than you would normally expect them to.
It was the very beginning of the movie. It was the first scene of the movie, and we saw Batman leave a thief on the roof and didn't take him to prison. It just was jarring to me. But one thing I do like, and this might be interesting to you, one thing that I liked about the Zack Snyder version, and that's not to say I didn't like the opening of Zack Snyder's version, but Joss Whedon's version. During the credits, we get a really bleak look at Metropolis and the world, with people just kind of sitting. It's got very like gray tones, and they're playing that song everybody knows.
Right. Hmm.
I actually liked how that was set because the world would be really depressing and sad after losing Superman.
Right.
At least for the people who liked Superman. We found out in Batman versus Superman that, a whole bunch of people didn't like him, but we won't think about them right now. But one thing I also noticed after watching the Zack Snyder version, when you watch the theatrical cut, it really is rushed.
Oh, it was 100% rushed. There was things that,
I don't think I
yeah,
noticed it the first time I watched it because I hadn't seen Zack Snyder's version. When I saw it in the theater, I didn't think anything of it. It was a quick movie. It was a little bit rushed, but I didn't realize how much was cut out. But watching the Snyder version and then the theatrical cut, there's so much that was cut, and it just is weird, some of it. There's one scene I really liked in Zack Snyder's version after Wonder Woman stops those bank guys who were planning. Well, they look like bank robbers, but they were actually planning on blowing up the bank to make a statement. In the Zack Snyder version, she stops them. It implies that she kills the head guy because she like rushes at him, and then all we see is his hat floating to the ground.
well, she does her gauntlet
Yeah, yeah, she does the
thing.
thing where she like pushes her wrists together and shoots her god power at him or whatever it is. But yeah, all
That's
we get
cool.
left.
That's cool.
Yeah,
God power gauntlets are cool.
and all that's left of the guy is his hat. So I assume that he's dead. But then what I really liked is then Wonder Woman goes and makes sure that all the kids are okay. And that one girl, she's like, "Are you okay?" And the girl's like, "Can I be just like you when I grow up?" And she's like, "You can be anything you want." That's Wonder Woman.
Right.
That's what Wonder Woman should represent. That whole scene is gone in Joss Whedon's version because it just shows her rush toward that last guy and boom, we go to Bruce Wayne talking to Arthur Curry.
Well, and even speaking of that scene, I thought that the Arthur Curry scene was, it wasn't just Bruce Wayne showing up, and Arthur Curry's like, I don't want to be found, And
mhm.
it's funny because I have to remember that Aquaman had not come out yet at the time,
Right.
even though we got the Snyder cut. Aquaman hadn't come out, but the Aquaman scene I thought was very interesting. Bruce going there, taking the long journey to get there, and then the townspeople really building up the myth of the Aquaman
You mean in
like
the
when
Zack Snyder's
in
version?
the Zack Snyder version. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
get that at all in the Whedon version. It's just a little banter and a little,
Yeah.
just him showing. But again, the Snyder Cut does a lot more in terms of character development, and like when the girls are singing that song when
Yeah.
he's going back out to the water, and the one picks up his coat and smells it, and they sing that song, and it's a lot of very much a
And I
lot of
looked it up.
slow mo and stuff like that. Yeah, the song.
Yeah.
Yep,
I looked up the song. It's an actual folk song
it is. Yeah.
from the region. So that was
And
cool.
yeah, it was filler, but not just empty filler. It really
It
really
worked.
added to Aquaman's character. That was
Yeah.
I think not that Aquaman was toned down, obviously in the Whedon version, like Flash and Cyborg, but I really think that the most that
Well, he
scene
was dumbed down quite a bit though in the Joss Whedon version.
he was, but I'm saying for the character itself and to build up the mythos or whatever you want to call it of each of these characters of all of them. I think that I heard someone say, if you give Zack Snyder enough time to tell his story, you get an awesome movie because he can, you just got to give him what he needs to tell the story. And
Yeah.
I think with the Snyder cut, very much a far superior. The funny thing is when you look back on the Whedon cut, I think that the theatrical version, I think that there was definitely some of those scenes that could have been put in even in a shorter version that would have added a little bit, not necessarily the
Oh,
Aquaman
definitely.
scene, but
Yeah.
some more of that character development rather than trying to go straight to, as you mentioned earlier, the humor that fell flat and some of the
Yeah, it
banter
was
back and
bad.
forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
that just didn't work. It was like, go with more visuals, more some of that type of stuff. Snyder liked to do a lot of that
Yeah,
slow
yeah,
mo
the
stuff.
lens,
So
yeah. Now, one thing that I did try to look for things that I would like in the theatrical version, and there was one scene that I did like that didn't appear in Zack Snyder's version because that whole family scene with the family that's living out in Russia in the middle of like nowhere,
next to
um,
a
next to a
beat up
nuclear reactor.
that was
Um,
probably leaking.
they said the name of it, but I just call it Chernobyl.
Yeah, it was
Um,
Russian nuclear. Yeah, it was just a nuclear site in
But so they
Russia.
have this family here, and that's to give there's like a sense of urgency during the final battle. And that wasn't in Zack Snyder's version. But something that I did appreciate was that when the family was in danger, Superman was already fighting Steppenwolf, and he left the fight because he wanted to save the family. And that's a Superman thing to do. So I appreciated that.
I think the family, I felt that it was completely thrown in
Oh
for
yeah, it
exactly what
definitely
you said,
was.
but it felt completely out of place. I mean, the whole last part of the movie, you could definitely tell that you had two different directors.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not
it
saying I
was
like the family at all. I don't want to like that's not what I mean. The family shouldn't have been there. They have no place. The Zack Snyder version is still far superior. I'm just glad that because they had a family stuck there for whatever reason, I appreciate that they gave us a scene that Superman leaves the fight because he
okay,
cares
yeah,
more about the people than he does about finishing the fight.
100%.
You know, but it doesn't matter because the family shouldn't have been there, and so it still goes back to the whole Zack Snyder's version is just a better movie.
Right.
I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, the humor was really bad, and I
In
was
the
kind of
theatrical cut.
shocked. Yeah, in the theatrical cut. And I was kind of shocked because, as I said, Joss Whedon is a good writer, but I don't know what he was on when he thought this would be funny. Like the whole scene with Aquaman, he says like he doesn't want to die, and then he looks at Wonder Woman and says, "And you're gorgeous," and then he starts saying weird stuff about everyone else, and then like they start laughing at him, and they point down, and he realizes that his hand is on her lasso, and
That was kind of funny. That
it
was kind of
wasn't.
funny.
I just
No,
watched it a couple days ago. It wasn't funny.
that part was a little bit funny.
It wasn't, though. I mean, maybe to you. I watched it a couple days ago and I was just like groaning. It was bad. It was stupid. But then again, maybe I'm not that bright. Maybe I'm a Philistine because I also don't understand. This is based on the Zack Snyder version. A lot of people like this version called the Justice is Gray version, which is the Zack Snyder version, but in black and white.
Right. I thought that was called Justice League Noir.
No, it's called Justice is Gray.
Justice is Gray. Huh. I
Yeah,
thought it
if you
was. I have
it
not
came
watched it, but I saw it come out and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I asked I looked up if it was just a black and white version, and technically yes, it is just black and white, but it isn't just where they took out all the color. They did it in a stylized way so that the blacks are very black, the grays are brighter. It's more stylized than, just taking away the contrast.
Interesting.
But I still don't get it. Like, what about this movie makes it need to be in black and white?
Yeah, I don't understand that either, especially because people complained about how muted the colors were anyway. We talked
Yeah.
about that in Man of Steel, how people were recutting Man of Steel and brightening the colors and brightening the skies and the blues and the reds on his costume and that type of thing. I don't know. I think it's just a stylish version. Where was that Marvel one that came out? It's on Disney Plus. Was it
Oh,
Werewolf
the
Werewolf
werewolf,
by
yeah,
by Night?
werewolf by night, yeah,
Yeah.
which was really good. Black and white can be really good if it's used in a stylized way for a reason, but I don't get the reason for Justice League. But then again, maybe I'm
Hmm.
just not that bright.
No, no, again, it's just I think it's just a stylish version and people, like that type of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do. It makes me think of like Young Frankenstein deliberately shot in black and
yeah,
white to give it that appearance, even though,
yeah. But that's
modern
that
day-ish. Well, not
yeah,
modern day
but
anymore, but we had color at least back
yeah,
then.
yeah. I mean, it was in the '70s, but Mel Brooks was, channeling the original, Boris Karloff
Right.
Frankenstein movie. So
Right.
it worked really well. And now I'm thinking about that movie because I liked it more than the theatrical cut of Justice League.
Yeah, right.
One thing that I did note when I watched the Zack Snyder version is that the very opening, well, first we have the opening credits, which are, I loved it because we see Superman dying at the hands of Doomsday. And so we see that his scream is sent out in these like sonic waves.
Right, and that's
Um,
what wakes up the
and
mother
that's what wakes up
boxes.
the mother boxes. So I thought that was really cool. But also then when we get the first new footage that isn't just a reshot of the end of the last movie, the first thing we actually see is Cyborg. Because that's
Right.
like that was the first thing that I thought of because I was like, he was supposed to be the heart of the movie. And Joss Whedon was like, no, no, I don't want that guy. So
Yeah,
so Joss Whedon took him out, but he's the
I'm
most important character.
I remember when I was watching when we started watching it and Superman did his yell and you see it go across and I was like, "Oh, that's what wakes up the mother boxes."
Yeah.
I was like, "Why didn't we get that in the Whedon version?" I mean, that's a little thing that would have been easy to throw in there. It didn't require anything else. I don't know what
Yeah.
the thing was for that. And you're right. I mean, I don't know if now's the time to talk about Cyborg and how that was completely expanded. We
Yeah,
get to
his
see his
whole
backstory. We get to see him playing football.
yeah.
We get to see his mom, the struggle that he has with who he is, the struggle that he
Yeah.
has with his dad. I mean, that was an ongoing thing in there. And then learning that his powers can be used for good, like when he helps that woman, he sees her whole life story play out, and
Yeah.
then
That was actually something that bothered me though.
oh, I didn't. It didn't bother me at all because it was to show that he was hearing his dad's words. He was listening to the tape
Yeah.
that his dad had recorded.
I love that. I just didn't like the fact that he gave money to that woman just because to me because I work in accounting, like the first thing I thought of is he's stealing money. Like he's supposed to be a hero and he's stealing money. It I know he's
Well,
stealing from like a bank,
as the
you know,
government does, he just made money appear. He printed it
he,
digitally.
well, it has to come from somewhere, so he basically stole it from somewhere else. But that's neither here nor there. It was a nice gesture. It's just something that to my accounting brain, I was like, what? Last thing about the opening scene that I really noticed that I loved, and I've said this about the Star Wars movies too, especially A New Hope, Episode 4, is that the opening scene tells us everything we need to know without a single word of dialogue in Zack Snyder's version, not in
Hmm.
Joss Whedon's.
Right.
We don't need to hear anyone explain anything. Everything is right there on the screen for us to pick up. That Superman is dying. His death yell is being projected around the world. It's waking up the boxes. We already know the boxes were obviously waiting for him to die. And they do say it later on in the movie in Zack Snyder's version. That was how Batman figured out that the key to stopping the mother boxes and to stopping Steppenwolf was
Was
Superman.
right.
Because
Yeah,
they're
because they
like,
were
how do you
waiting.
know?
They were
Yeah,
waiting
how do you
for the
know that Superman was
Kryptonian.
going to yeah, how do you know that Superman is going to be able to stop him? And he said, because we know because the mother boxes didn't wake up when he was here. But as soon as he died, they woke up. They were
Yeah.
afraid of him.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so like Star Wars Episode 4, I love that opening because it's artfully done. So then we get Cyborg, and as you said, and as was said by Zack Snyder, he is the heart of the movie. Like the movie it doesn't revolve around him, but a big part of the story is him coming to grips with how he came to be, whether he deserves to be, and what he needs to do.
Right, and he was struggling with what he was. And I think it was a little. We've seen plenty of movies where someone, becomes something, and whether it's a superpower or something happens to them, and whether it's an animated movie or live action, and they struggle and they go through the typical steps of like struggling to be who they are. But I think that in my opinion, Cyborg's journey was a little more grounded,
A
for lack
lot
of a
more.
better
A
yeah,
lot
than
more.
most of those things. I mean, he was turned into a machine. He's blaming his dad wasn't there for the football game. He got in the
Yeah.
accident with his mom, and he's coming to grips with himself and coming to grips with you know forgiveness for his dad. But I feel like it was a little more than forgiveness.
He
I think
didn't
it
even forgive him in person.
No, but I don't
He
even
never
know
got
if
a
it was a
chance.
forgiveness thing. It was just more reconciling who his dad was. And I think in the end, what he found out was, I think he saw a depth to his father, forgiveness aside, that he didn't realize until before, when his dad sacrifices himself, and
Yeah.
then he finishes, he starts off listening to the tape and then he destroys it. Then he goes back and finally finishes the tape to hear what his dad said about, I'm
Yeah.
going to speak to you not as a scientist, I'm going to speak to you
As a
as a
father.
father.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone for listening. Next week, we will be continuing our discussion on Justice League. If you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe. And as always, please remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday.